Hello, everybody. My name is Julia Villar, and today I will be discussing the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was a significant cultural movement that started in the early 1910s and persisted through the 1930s. The name Harlem refers to the district Harlem in New York City. However, it expanded beyond the borders of Harlem eventually. The movement centered around the development of Black culture and pride through a deep emphasis on the arts. It embraced the idea of the new Negro, who escaped the daily discrimination and explored their artistic and intellectual side. Alain Locke invented the idea of the new Negro through the book The New Negro, an Interpretation. The book included the diverse work of different African American intellectuals. The purpose of the collection was to eliminate the pressing stereotypes and prove that African Americans were intellectuals too. They defeated the stereotypes and false evidence that scientists like James Pritchard, Samuel Morton, and Franz Joseph Gall produce, claiming that a hierarchy between races exists based on physical characteristics. However, the Harlem Renaissance enhanced the artistic, literary, and music scenes of the Black population within the area. It celebrated their exquisite talent and fostered a deep sense of identity and purpose within the community. The Black population of Harlem was finally learning to fully appreciate their identity despite the discrimination from the nearby oppressors. The Great Migration initiated the movement, for nearly 300,000 Black families moved to New York City near the Harlem area. World War I decreased the amount of immigrants entering the country, so employees from the North aggressively recruited African Americans from the South to join their companies in the North. The Harlem area itself was intended to be built for white upper-class families exclusively, but they overdeveloped the area, and it slowly transitioned into a middle-class Black neighborhood that many Black families enthusiastically joined. The act of bringing together Black families from across the United States fostered a sense of union, and the culture subsequently exploded relentlessly. W. E. B. Du Bois, a prominent figure of the Harlem Renaissance and the editor of The Crisis, which was the first official literary publication created by Black people for the betterment of Black people. The publication intended to raise a general awareness of incessant instances of discrimination and prejudice that Black people experienced on a daily basis. The popular magazine offered a unique perspective that the literary scene previously lacked and allowed white people to better their understanding on the emotional, mental, and physical effects of prejudice, while also providing a safe place for Black people to relate to the material and generate a community of openness and sharing. Before the crisis, the opportunity for African Americans to publish their work in a popular, widely acknowledged platform was extremely rare. They utilized the safe space to express themselves and educate the rest of the nation. In an article titled "The Ku Klux Are Writing Again" by an unknown author, the author shares, "Back to life and very active. After 40 years, this is the thrilling story that one hears today in various parts of the South. The old Klan with its white-robed citizens going out to maintain the supremacy of the white race, as depicted by Thomas Dixon and his satellite D.W. Griffith, has again come to life." Read this article printed in a daily Montgomery, Alabama. Ku Klux Klansmen suggest silent parade. The city of Montgomery was visited last night by a Ku Klux Klan that bore all the earmarks of the ancient honorable order that placed white supremacy back in saddle after a reign of terror for several years by Negroes and scalawags. The article demonstrates how the authors attempted to raise awareness in the North, for often people in the North failed to realize the impact of the especially devastating presence of racism in the South. The author exposed the current violence and racist behaviors in order to advocate for proper social acceptance and change. W. E. B. Du Bois was also the creator of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, who were responsible for producing The Crisis. W.E.B. Du Bois was simply one example of the several prominent figures who rose to the occasion during the Harlem Renaissance. Finally, African Americans were the leaders of the popular social scene. The artistic and literary work being produced were admired across different demographics. It drew the attention of the entire nation. Claude McKay, an African American writer who also thrived during the Harlem Renaissance, published the influential poem If We Must Die. The poem was a passionate cry for the black population to stand united against the white supremacist goal to destroy their demographic. It encouraged the African Americans to remain prideful and to expose the white supremacists for their unjust behavior. I'll quickly read the poem by Claude McKay. If We Must Die. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying but fighting back. Zora Neale Hurston, a female activist and writer, contributed to the Harlem Renaissance through writing. Zora Neale Hurston's most eminent product of the Harlem Renaissance was the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God, which captures the challenges of being a black woman in the United States. She liberates the black woman and demonstrates the possibility of finding one's independence and voice. Hurston also released Of Mules and Men. The novel explains the power and exclusivity of folklore amongst African Americans, for they need to protect themselves against the potential violators of their culture. Langston Hughes was an African American poet who focused on capturing the authentic, honest culture of the African Americans and the blues through the inclusion of rhythm, sound, and truth within poems. He created the collection The Wary Blues in 1926 and Not Without Laughter in 1930. Hughes divided the Wary Blues into 7 distinct sections titled The Wary Blues, Dream Variations, The Negro Speaks of the Rivers, A Black Period, Waterfront Streets, Shadows in the Sun, and Our Land. Not Without Laughter follows the story of an African American family in the United States and depicts the authentic situations and struggles that encompass the lives of black people throughout the nation. Louis Armstrong was an influential jazz musician who forever altered the course of jazz itself. He rose to fame and the entire nation was listening to his music. Armstrong's music impressed people across different races and states. He incorporated soloist components and vocals to jazz. He is known for the songs Dream a Little Dream of Me and What a Wonderful World. Paul Robeson was an African American activist and actor famous for his performances in The Emperor Jones and The Showboat. Being a natural performer, speaking out against racism came easily to Robeson. He frequently expressed his urgent concerns regarding the persistence of racism in the nation and supported the equality of people throughout the world. He was eventually blacklisted and banned from performing in public. Duke Ellington was an African American jazz pianist and established performer at the Cotton Club, the most popular bar and representation of nightlife in Harlem. The Cotton Club was controversial, for it often featured African Americans exclusively performing for a predominantly white audience. Ellington created the experimental song Mood Indigo in 1930. He revealed the essence of African American culture through his music and attempted to echo the sounds of the past and the present. The beginning of the Great Depression, the end of Prohibition in 1935, and the murder of a young Puerto Rican brought the Harlem Renaissance to an unfortunate end. The end of Prohibition allowed the white people to return to their predominantly white bars and clubs. They stopped the need to resort to the secretive clubs of the Harlem Renaissance. The young Puerto Rican was caught shoplifting and beat to death by the employees of the store. The incident initiated a violent riot focused on the destruction of property in order to advocate for the misjustice against people of color and desperate desire for change. The story of the Harlem Renaissance demonstrates a desperate explosion of culture and intellect following a period of overt discrimination and scientific racism. African Americans proved that intelligence is not determined by race, despite the apparent evidence that 19th and early 20th century scientists claimed existed. They proved that African Americans are entirely capable of producing impressive material, including essays, poems, songs, and visual art. The unification of the black population created art that remains impactful and popular today. Human beings of every race are unique individuals who have the ability to change the world and use their natural powers for the better. We need to remember to defend each other and our intelligence. Thank you for listening.